Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. I'm Representative Charlotte Warren, and we're going to start with doing introductions of committee members. And I'm going to start with who's on my screen, which is Representative Costain.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I represent Dan Costain, represent District 100, which is Etna, Dixmont, Newport, Plymouth, and Corinna.
Thank you, Representative. And now Representative Morales.
Good morning. My name is Victoria Morales, and I represent House District 33 in South Portland.
Thank you. Senator Searway.
Good morning. I'm Senator Scott Searway and represent District 16, which covers Waterville, Winslow, Fairfield, Benton, Albion, and Clinton, and Unity Township.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Pluker.
Good morning. I'm Bill Pluker. I represent House District 95, which is Warren, Hope, Appleton, and part of Union.
Thank you. Representative Newman.
Yes, good morning. I'm Dan Newman, represent District 76, which is Belgrade, Rome, Mount Vernon, Vienna, Fayette, and Wayne.
Thank you. Representative Pickett.
Yes, good morning. My name is Dick Pickett. I represent District 116, the towns of Mexico, Dixfield, Peru, Hartford, and Canton. And I am still having problems with the link. It never got it. And I see my name's been changed from Dan Costain to myself. So I don't know what the problem is, but I'm not getting it.
Deb, maybe you and Richard could do a test email after this session just to make sure you get the bugs worked out on that. And next up, Representative Lookner.
Morning, I'm Grayson Lookner, I represent District 37, which is part of Portland.
Thank you. So that's everybody. I know we've got other folks that are here to join us. That's everybody on the screen so far. I also want to introduce our committee staff. Deb Fay is the committee clerk, and Jane Orbiton is the committee analyst. Thank you both. So we'll start right off. Senator Searway has volunteered, and thank you, Senator, to present on behalf of Representative Theriault, who's having internet trouble this morning. We're going to start with LD 1797, and take it away, Senator Searway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have Chairman Representative Warren and members of the committee. I'm introducing LD 1797. It's an act to amend the laws governing the main length of service award program. And so this would be just trying to, I believe it's trying to help license board members and add a little bit, which can be talked more about by the member of the Fire Commission, Bill Gillespie.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Searway? Seeing none, we'll open up the public hearing to testimony in support. And Deb, we have Chief Gillespie with us, and if we could move him over. But additionally, if anybody is here to speak in support of the bill, if you could raise your electronic hand, that would be helpful to us. Great. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's good to be seen this morning, I tell you.
Good.
So Representative Warren and members of the Criminal Justice Committee, thank you very much for the opportunity once again to speak on behalf of the Length of Service Awards program. We've been working diligently since 2015 to streamline and get this bill to where it can be funded. And last year, due to the graces of yourselves, you were able to give us $500,000, which we put towards bringing on a third-party administrator to hopefully gather additional data and get people signed up for this program to help a retirement program for volunteers. This bill is basically just some housekeeping. We recognized early on that there were two factions that were part of this, both fire and EMS. When the law was originally put into place, it only had members of the fire service on the board of directors. So we've worked with Sam Hurley from Maine EMS and Jay Bradshaw from Maine Ambulance Association, and we've gotten two members to kind of help us out recently, but we want to make it a permanent fixture on the board of directors so that we have their constant input on what affects the EMS industry as well as what impacts the fire industry. So we're asking for this bill to change the law and allow two members from the EMS industry to be members on our board of directors. We're also presenting to you our point structure that we've laid out for earning service credits as either a volunteer firefighter or an EMS provider. So in our task, we were asked to do that. So before we start handing out service credits and giving people contributions based on either state funding or local municipality funding, we want to make sure we, as you would say, cross T's and dotted the I's on the law. So I'm happy to answer any questions in reference to this. And I would actually ask too, if we could bring our member Fred Brewer over, who is the subject matter expert as our CPA on the board of directors, if possible.
That would be great. Deb, if you could do that as well. Thank you. Great. Any questions for Chief Gillespie today? Looks like I have none. Thank you. We'll just wait for Mr. Brewer to make his way over.
Of course.
Good morning, Mr. Brewer. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Good to
Hopefully,
see you.
yes, it's good to see everybody. As Bill was saying, as we were going through the process, looking at EMS, they are entitled to just as much credit as everybody else. So we wanted them to have a seat at the table, and we recognized that. We had Brent Libby on the board who had some exposure to it, but we felt that it was better to have two people who were dedicated to the board and had actual board voting positions. So, I mean, it's kind of the nature of how things are right now is, it's trying to get everybody to do more and help out more. So that's our goal, is to get more people involved. So.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Brewer? Mr. Brewer, I just have, so as I understand, there are two parts to the bill. Adding the members, easy as far as I'm concerned. But secondly, is the point structure. Would you be able to just quickly walk us through your point structure and your just quick rationale?
Yep. So
Thank
in
you.
my prior testimony, I have talked about the point structure, and it's pretty much the same as what we had been talking about before. This is just formalizing it and saying, okay, this is what we're going to allocate for points based on everybody's service. So as I had been talking about before, for the fire side, we had a pretty good handle on that. So we allocated 55 points based on attendance at the calls for the department. We added 35 points for training, and we did 10 points for attendance at meetings. So that was kind of our basis for the EMS side. So we based it on 65 points for attendance at calls for service, because EMS is more service oriented than the fire is. And then they get 25 points for continuing education, and then they get 10 points for department meetings. So it's similar, but it's a little bit different. But the goal is, by allocating the points in a specific way, you're going to drive more people to do those things. So EMS, we really wanted them at the calls because that's the most important thing. So we want to reward people for doing all of those things that we need them to do. And that's what this program is about, is emphasizing and reinforcing, the good things that they're doing for their community.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Representative Fluker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Brewer, I was just wondering who within the EMS service you consulted when you were coming up with that point structure?
So when we decided we wanted to put 2 people on the board with EMS experience, we reached out and we got 2 people. Amy Drinkwater, who is she's the head of 3 different ambulance services in the Mid-Coast. So St. George, South Thomaston and Thomaston. And then we had Kevin Curry, who I've had Kevin at various classes. He's an instructor and I think he's a paramedic as well. So we utilized their experiences and got their input, but they really didn't have a seat at the table. They were just kind of acting as non-voting members to help us develop this point structure.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Mr. Brewer? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Brewer. And it looks like we have 3 other proponents here to testify. Deb, if you could bring them over.
Doing
Thank
so
you.
now.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Bunker. Welcome.
Good morning, Donna, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Steve Bunker. I'm a member of the LoSAP board and proud to be on that. I'll speak just briefly to this one. I have more testimony for the second bill, but I would agree with both Fred and Bill as to the importance of having our board structure representative of both volunteer firefighters and the EMS providers. It makes it a more robust group and helps to emphasize the importance of members in both of those entities for both recruitment and also for retention to the board themselves, particularly with EMS, that so much of our medical first responders are volunteer EMTs that help hold the fort, if you will, as first responders until licensed ambulance services get on scene themselves. So they're very much critical to this component, and I would encourage you to support the statutory ability for us to expand our board. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Bunker. Any questions? Seeing none. Representative Fluker, are you all set?
Yes, sorry, that's old hand.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of an old hand, I'm going to introduce Chief Brooks, somebody who's been in service for a long time. Hi, Chief.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I just want to speak briefly on this in general, but I did want to take a chance to present myself to everybody if there's any new folks. So thank you, Representative Warren and Senator DeChambeau and members of the committee for giving me a minute to speak. I am the volunteer chief of the town of Winthrop Fire Department. We actually do not do EMS work, but we are a volunteer fire department that is very excited to see this LoSAP program coming to fruition. I'm also the chair of the Maine Fire Protection Services Commission, which is a commission that answers directly to you folks on criminal justice and public safety. So I'm using this few seconds to introduce myself in that capacity. So we represent 23 different agencies. We have 23 members that represent state agencies, fire service, EMS, emergency management, the host of it all. So our board generally has the expertise to bring all the people to the table together. That's why we often speak as the fire service as a whole. And generally, just some background information. When the fire, what we call the Fire Commission, Maine Fire Protection Services Commission, was started in 1999, we had a mission to get, one of our charges in that law was to get a LoSAP program up and running in the state of Maine. So this is roughly a 22 or 3-year endeavor of the fire service and, quite frankly, the EMS services in order to get this program up and running. So all in all, this is like they've said, it's just some housekeeping. It's pretty simple. When this was pushed forwards, it had very strong fire service support, and we realized after that fact that we were missing the EMS piece pretty considerably, and we're just looking for some help to get them on board. So
That makes sense. Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief Brooks? Seeing none, thank you. And I also see Mr. Hurley is with us. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Senator DeChambeau, Representative Warren, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety. My name is Sam Hurley, and I am the Director of Maine Emergency Medical Services, or Maine EMS, within the Department of Public Safety. I am testifying on behalf of the Maine Department of Public Safety and Maine EMS in support of LD 1797, an act to amend the laws governing the Maine Length of Service Award Program. We are supportive of the expansion of the LoSAP board to include emergency medical services persons. Maine EMS would recommend that the language be modified to say submitted by the Maine Board of Emergency Medical Services. This would clarify whether the names are provided by the Maine EMS director or office versus the Board of EMS itself. The Maine EMS is supportive of the service credit process. However, we would encourage the committee not to adopt this language and instead retain the pre-existing language that allowed for rulemaking to establish rules around the service credit system. We believe that the best practice is to allow for those specifics to be defined by rule that are able to be more readily changed should the board see fit versus statute. It also gives the public safety community greater opportunity to be involved in the rulemaking process rather than the statutory process that we are going about here. I am more than happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time, but please feel free to reach out to me anytime if there's any additional information I can offer you and or the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Questions for Mr. Hurley? Yes, Representative Morales.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my apologies. I'm not finding my hand, my electronic hand. Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Just wondering if you could share with us some of the benefits that you would see from us passing this legislation, and particularly the language that you have suggested that we amend it to include.
Yeah, so by amending it to make sure that it comes from the board, it just empowers the board of EMS to be the ones that make those decisions rather than my office submitting 2 names that we think would be great, which we obviously will provide input to the board on, here's some candidates that we think may be interested, but it really just empowers the board and makes sure that we take some of the politics out of these decisions and put it on the board to nominate those things. And so we think that's just best practice and just good practice. The other thing is about the language. We think the credit process is right where it needs to be. We would just recommend that the existing language already gives the LoSAP board authority to do rulemaking under section 21. And in section 8, which this bill would repeal and replace, it says that they can create those routine technical rules for the credit process there. And we would just encourage them to do it through rulemaking, because you can more actively engage the community through rulemaking than we can the statutory process, because there's really only one time to be heard here. I mean, you could submit comments, but I think it just is a little more engaging to do the rulemaking process rather than statute. And it's easier to change. So if they find out that it's not working, it's a lot easier to go in and change it than it is to go in and change statute. So that would be our only recommendation. We are fully supportive of the credit process and how they came up with it and all of that, but we would just encourage them doing it through rulemaking rather than statute.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, Mr. Hurley.
Any other questions for Mr. Hurley? I just have one. When you're talking about the first language change, can you just direct me to which section that is? Is it right in A, 1A that you're talking about?
Sorry, it is on line 17 of the proposed language. It says submitted by the Department of Public Safety, Maine Emergency Medical Services. I would just change it Maine Board of Emergency Medical Services.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other questions for Mr. Hurley? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Hurley. Anyone here to testify in opposition to the bill, please raise your hand. Seeing none, anyone here to testify neither for nor against the bill, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Thank you very much, Senator, for bringing this forward for the Representative Terrio. Yes, Senator Searway.
Madam Chair, would it be appropriate that if we could go into work session on this one? It seems like it's a fairly simple one, and we could take care of it.
I had originally thought that I wanted to go into work session, and I'm still happy to do that, but I'd like to hear, once we go into work session, if we all agree to go into work session, I would like to hear from the chief, et cetera, about these suggested changes before we go ahead and make them.
That would be fine, yeah.
Okay. Do I have a second for suspending the rules and going directly into work session?
I
see a second. Okay, great, thank you. So now we're going to open up the work session for LD 1797. And so Deb, Mr. Gillespie is still here. Great. So let's start with you, Mr. Gillespie. Do you agree with the suggested changes from Mr. Hurley?
Yes, I mean, I do agree that it would be easier for us to do it in that forum. Our understanding when we originally were tasked to do this, that we had to present this to you. So that is the purpose in which it's in this bill, is we felt that we had to supply this information to you. And this was told to us by Maine Purse when we did meet with Maine Purse 2 years ago, is that we wanted to have this this divulged to the legislature in this committee so they understood exactly what we were doing. We didn't want to hide anything. So that's the purpose for including it here, so that you're aware of what we're doing. There's nothing to hide. And that if it doesn't need to be put into the law, then that's fine. We can deal with it statutory on the board and move forward with that. But at least it's disclosed at this point in time.
Beautiful. Thank you. Representative Pickett.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I move ought to pass as amended, on LD 1797.
I second.
So I have a motion ought to pass as amended and a second by Representative Morales. Senator DeChambeau. You're on mute.
Good morning. I did hear that the addition of board on line 17, was there another amendment suggestion? I thought I heard that. This is the only thing that is different?
And take out the points and turn it into rulemaking instead. That's section 8.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Senator Searway.
So I think this is a good bill. I think it's just basically taking the back seat drivers and putting them in the front seat. So I think it's a it's a good idea.
So we've heard from folks and Mr. Chief Gillespie, anybody that's here as an attendee that previously gave us their support, if you've changed your mind just because of the amendments, how about you raise your hand? Looks like everybody's in agreement, so that's really helpful. Oh, Representative Newman.
Yes, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I'm in favor of this. Anything that we can do to retain fire and EMS is absolutely wonderful. I just have a little heartburn, the fact that there's people that are on these departments that have been given their time for 20, 30, 40 years to get really nothing. And they're getting ready to retire in the next 4 or 5 years. They won't be with us. So I just wish there was a way to go back and give them at least a little bit of something to acknowledge the work that they've done.
I would second that emotion for sure. Chief Gillespie, is that something? Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to respond to Representative Newman's. You are correct, Representative. And what our hope is, any individual that's been a member for more than 5 years can be vested on day one. So as long as the data is there, they can start receiving contributions the first day funds are available. So if we do receive state funds, and let's just say they stay in for 4 or 5 more years, it won't be a lot, but it will be something. They will be entitled that full amount of money when they retire. So we can't go back, because there is no money to go back and say, because you've done this, we'd love to give you this. But at least if they are earning credits as they go for the next few years, they would be entitled to that because they'd be completely vested.
Thank you, Mr. Gillespie. Excuse me, Chief Gillespie.
That's quite all right.
Any other comments on this bill? Oh, yes, Mr. Hurley.
So I did recently get a text message from Jay Bradshaw, the executive director of the Maine Ambulance Association. He submitted written testimony, but is unable to be here right now. And so I believe he offered some comments in the written testimony. I don't have it in front of me to be able to share it with you. But I just did want to let you know that that written testimony does exist. And I think there was additional comment in there. So just putting that out there. I don't know what it says. So just putting that out there because he did text me.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Hurley. Thoughts about that? I mean, that gives me pause. Does that mean that Mr. Bradshaw has texted you because he has concerns about the bill? I think I want to know that before I. Could we bring Chief Brooks back over? I'm going to take a look at that testimony. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for bringing me back over. The only reason I'm jumping back in here is because Mr. Bradshaw did reach out to me yesterday as well. I have not read, obviously, his testimony, and I can't speak for him, but he has a concern that we agree with, that some members of EMS may not fit within the constraints of the original law. And he would like us to explore some amendments that would include additional EMS people that are not part of a fire service. So we have to do a little research. Again, Chief Gillespie and I have talked about this, in that there may be some EMS members that aren't initially covered under this program by the law. Our intent is to include everybody and to put them in there, but we really weren't looking, to be quite honest, adding the 2 people it's actually part of the piece why we're trying to add the 2 EMS people to our board to help us identify what we might have missed, where we're missing, that kind of stuff. So we didn't address that exact issue today because really what we want to do is bring these people on, have that additional knowledge, and then if there are amendments that need to be made, as Jay has brought up, then we would fix that. So we agree with him, we're on board with him, but we really need those 2 people on board to help us get through where we are and what we are. So we're not looking to ignore his concerns. We're just looking to get this step done and then address his concerns. Just so you're aware as you read his testimony.
Thank you, Chief. Representative Pickett.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think in light of just hearing Chief Brooks as well, I think it's like any type of legislation. There down the road, there may be something that needs to be tweaked or something of that nature, and that can be done at that time. But I think the bill right now is in good shape, and I think it really is something we should that we should act on and vote on it right now. Thank you.
Chief Brooks, when you say that there possibly could be some folks who are right now not included inadvertently in something you don't want to do, it sounds like what you're saying is there are some folks who are EMS workers. We want to make sure they're included. We don't think we have the language right exactly where it needs to be right now to make sure we've covered everybody. What kind of timeline are you talking about in order to know what we need to do with the bill in order to make sure everybody's covered? Are we talking 2 weeks or 2 months or?
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't have maybe an exact answer for you. Quite frankly, this was brought to me yesterday. So we were not under the understanding that the way the law was written, that anybody was missing out of this. Jay brought it up. I think we need to do some, I assume Jay is very intelligent, and I assume that he's seen something that we haven't, that we need to look at. I know this is a short session. I know you guys have a lot of stuff in front of you. It's quite possible, and Chief Gillespie might be able to speak to this as well, if not better. I'm thinking we may be able to get back to you within this session and try to fix this. But again, we really kind of need those 2 people on board, I think, in order to do the best job with that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Chief Gillespie.
Yes, and basically what we're referring to is right now, in order to qualify, you have to work under a municipal fire chief or a municipal chief. So there are some ambulance services out there that are private, nonprofit ambulance services that do not work under the jurisdiction of that. So what we would be doing possibly, well, most likely within the next legislature, is adding that word change in to ensure that we're getting everybody. But as we know, we just received funding this last year. We just started the process of bringing on a third-party administrator to start recognizing who actually would qualify for this program. So it is going to take time, and bringing the members of the board from the EMS agencies on helps us recognize these gaps that we have in the law that was written without a membership from them other than within the fire service. So I would say within the year, but I'll be honest with you, we have no state funding as of yet, and we're just bringing on a company to help us facilitate finding out who the membership would be.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you, Chief. Deb.
I just got an email from Jay Bradshaw and sent him the link of the Maine Ambulance Association.
Okay. Thank you for that, Deb. Senator DeChambeau. Oops, you're on mute, Senator.
Yeah, thank you. I read Mr. Bradshaw's testimony, and it's eerily similar, I believe, to a couple of years ago that the same suggestion was made. So I think that the members here and Mr. Early would be able to clean this up, but that's a good suggestion, Mr. Brooks, you made. I think you need the other two new ones to really give you a full range of what needs to be considered. So let's hear from Mr. Bradshaw, if he's going to be joining us.
Thank you, Senator. Jane?
Yes, well, excuse me, thank you, Madam Chair. While we're waiting for Mr. Bradshaw, when he comes, we can ask him. I think the question is about the definition of an eligible volunteer. And in the length of service award program statute, which is in Title V, Section 3372, in the definitions in subsection 1, paragraph D, eligible volunteer. And an eligible volunteer is a bona fide volunteer providing qualified services in a municipal fire department, that if that bona fide volunteer is, and then there's a firefighter, and then there's an EMS person who is under the direction of a chief of a municipal fire department and is duly licensed. So I think my guess is that it's this definition of an EMS person providing services in the fire department and serving under the direction of the chief of the municipal fire department. But we can find out as soon as he's here.
He's here. So Mr. Bradshaw, welcome. Thank you, Jane, for describing what the issue might be. Welcome, Mr. Bradshaw.
Thank you, Representative Warren. My apologies for joining you at the last minute. I actually have two computers going. I know you're very familiar with this because I'm in another meeting taking place at the same time. We certainly don't want to hold up this bill. In all honesty, we hadn't anticipated it was going to go this quickly. But it is, as Chief Brooks pointed out, it was last night as I was looking at the statute that it really struck me that I think unintentionally, there are a number of ambulance services that are not included under the current LoSAP regulation. And just a couple off the top of my head, I think of Unity Volunteer Ambulance Service, Memorial Ambulance Service, which was in Deer Isle, Stonington. And I know there are others. A really quick glance, I looked about 24 maybe in the state that are not currently part of fire departments. We just wanted to bring this to your attention because we think it's a wonderful idea. We think anything that we can do to support volunteer emergency responders is worth our time and effort. And I sat on the Fire Commission for a number of years, and I don't think it was ever our intention to carve out this other group. I think it was one of those unintentional things, and I thought this was an opportunity to bring that to your attention. Again, I don't want to hold this up because there's so much merit. I know the people that are being recommended for the board. They're solid people. They represent EMS very well. If you're able to deal with this now, I'd be very happy to work with Jane and others to make it happen. But I'll follow your lead on this, obviously, however I can help you.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. So what I'm hearing is this isn't a policy disagreement amongst the group. This is a technical issue that the way it's described just is leaving out a few people. And so could that just be worked on within a week? Could you guys just give us language so we aren't leaving anybody out?
I think so. I mean, I would look to Jane, who's certainly the expert on identifying these type of things. My quick look is that there is already a definition for emergency medical services provider in statute, that if there was a way to work that in, there are a few places where it currently refers to fire, and it would need to be, those would need to be tweaked a little bit. I'm happy to give this my top priority, but again, I don't want to hold this up. I don't
think a week is going to matter. I mean, we all are in support of this bill.
Yeah.
For me, I don't see the common sense behind going forward with something just for speed when we know that there are people left out that we want to include, because it just means next year having to come back and do it all over. if we were talking about something that would take a month to do,
No.
but, we'll just, when it's scheduled for its regular public hearing, we'll just vote it through. I think it's going to get a unanimous vote out of this committee. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
So, and if somebody disagrees with that, let's talk about it. Yeah, Mr. Gillespie.
Representative, I'd be happy to communicate with Jay and review language that he's looking and see if we can get it changed. I'm sure, unfortunately, with this, the more we delve into this, we're going to find other areas that are going to need to be tweaked. But for the point of this and moving it forward, I'm sure over the next week, we could come up with an amendment that would allow the language to go through as appropriate.
Okay.
If he's willing to do that, I'm willing to do that.
I see him shaking his head and giving a thumbs up. So I think that's willingness. Representative Pickett.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. In light of the last two speakers, I would withdraw my motion at this point and give them time to work on this for a week and see if when the actual scheduled work session would have been for this bill, we can deal with it then, have the amendment and do what we have to do at that point.
That sounds great. Okay, well, since we did open a work session, I do think we need to table. Am I right about that procedurally, Jane?
Yes.
Could I get if everyone's done with discussion at this point, looks like everyone is, could I get a motion to table?
I move to table.
I'll second
Motion,
it.
thank you. Motion made by Representative Morales, seconded by Senator Searway. Jane, do you want to call the roll?
Yep.
I mean, sorry, Deb. I was
It's
looking
okay.
at Deb and I called her Jane. Sorry about that.
Certainly. Please unmute and cameras on for a roll call vote to table LD 1797. Representative Warren.
Yes.
Representative Warren votes yes. Representative Morales.
Yes.
Representative Morales votes yes. Representative Rackett is not here. Representative Sharp is not here. Representative Lookner.
Yes.
Representative Lookner votes yes. Representative Pickett.
Yes.
Representative Pickett votes yes. Representative Costain.
Yes.
Representative Costain votes yes. Representative Rudnicki is not here. Representative Newman.
Yes.
Representative Newman votes yes. Representative Pluker.
Yes.
Representative Pluker votes yes. Senator Lawrence is not here. Senator Searway.
Yes.
Senator Searway votes yes. Senator DeChambeau.
Yes.
Senator DeChambeau votes yes. That's 9 yes votes and 4 committee members are absent.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. So up next, we have LD 1803, and Senator Searway will be stepping in for Representative Terrio. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator DeChambeau and Representative Warren and members of the Committee of Criminal Justice Public Safety. On behalf of Representative Tim Terrio, I'm introducing LD 1803, an act to attract and retain firefighters and emergency medical services personnel through the Main Length of Service Award Program, otherwise known as LOSAP. I know the Maine Prevention Fire Commission has worked hard on this, and I'd refer you to Chief Bill Gillespie, who's also a member of the commission, and he can explain more of what this entails.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Searway? Seeing none, thank you. And Deb, if you would bring over Chief Gillespie and anyone here to testify in support of the bill, please raise your hand.
Back again.
Yes, thank you, Chief.
Absolutely. Senator DeChambeau, Representative Warren, and distinguished members of the Criminal Justice Public Safety Committee. Once again, my name is Bill Gillespie. I am the chairman of the Length of Service Awards Program and the legislative liaison for the Maine Fire Chiefs. We've been working on this bill since 2017, a law that was put in effect in 2015 in order to bring a length of service awards program to the volunteer fire and EMS providers within the state as a recognition for their years of service and their continued service, and hope the ability to retain them more in the future. We've come to you over the last 4 years with the legislation and funding to support this. 2.5 million is what we are currently asking for. It's the same amount we've asked for the last few years. As I mentioned earlier, last year you saw fit to award us $500,000, which is allowing us the opportunity to bring on a third-party administrator to go out throughout the state and basically set these firefighters up on this retirement program. Without the additional $2 million, we have no abilities to contribute funds on their behalf from the state. So the only mechanism at this point in time available for them is either if their county decides to put money in an account for them, or their local municipality. As we know, most local municipalities are struggling to even support their fire departments. I spoke to one down east the other day who was talking to me about his budget of $15,000 and 5 pieces of equipment, and the fact that he just wrote a grant for the first new set of turnout gear that the fire department has ever owned. That's, I can't say just how sad that is in today's day and age, that an area of Route 9 that covers 26 miles just bought their first set of turnout gear. They're buying or getting used equipment from other areas, so we know that the area in which these towns are trying to fund this is very limited. We are trying to figure out a way to save an aging population of firefighters, retain the ones that we do have, but we're also trying to figure out a way to recruit them to stay in this industry to help us, because the crisis, as the Maine Chiefs put forth a couple of weeks ago, is true. We are in crisis. And anybody that watches the news saw probably an article last week from Sherman, another area down east, that is going to wait 45 minutes for an ambulance because the ambulance service closed. So this is real. And we've been trying for 4 years to bring it to the forefront and say, this is a problem. So we're asking once again for the $2.5 million. We are happy to look, and we have looked at every area of tax from which this could be taken from. But at this point in time, we truly need your help.
Thank you, Chief Gillespie. Any questions for Chief Gillespie? Seeing none, thank you. We have a couple more folks who are here to testify in support. Welcome back, Mr. Brewer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, so good morning, Senator DeChambeau, Representative Warren, and honorable members of the Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety. My name is Frederick Brewer, and I'm the governor's appointee to the Length of Service Award Program for the state of Maine. I was appointed to the LoSAP board because of my background as a CPA, my training and expertise working with municipalities and retirement plans, and my lifelong experience as a fourth-generation volunteer firefighter on the Massasoit Engine Company. Appreciate the opportunity to speak in support of LD 1803, an act to attract and retain firefighters and emergency medical service personnel through the Maine Length of Service Award Program. The original bill that established the program was passed under the 127th legislative session in 2015. We have actively been working towards funding this program since our board was organized. We were able to secure funding for the administrative costs in the last legislative session of $500,000. And now we have begun the process of getting the plan established and working with a third-party administrator for the program. This bill is a product of an effort to address Maine's crisis to attract, retain, and support our volunteer first responders, which our communities are so reliant upon. This bill seeks to provide two things for Maine's LoSAP. The first part of the funding will appropriate funds for the continued administrative costs of the program so that municipalities in Maine can contribute to the program for the benefit of their volunteer firefighters and EMS personnel. The second part of the funding is for a state contribution to the program. The state appropriation will fund contributions for firefighters and EMS personnel that meet the requirements to receive qualified service credit under LD 1797. The state contribution will benefit the more rural communities in Maine that do not pay their volunteers for their service. The rural departments are the ones that operate on smaller budgets that do not allow contributions to the LoSAP from their communities. Those communities are the ones that are struggling the most with this crisis that we face with staffing shortages. With the funding from the state, we will encourage smaller communities, first responders who are on the fringe and not participating as much to do more for their communities and in turn help alleviate some of the demands on the individuals that are going above and beyond throughout this crisis. It also becomes a marketing tool to help recruit new members as benefits to joining. These two benefits will help to address the retention portion of the staffing crisis we currently face. For the sake of the health and future of our volunteer first responders in Maine and the communities that depend on them, I urge you to vote in favor of this bill. Maine has a proud legacy of volunteerism within the first responder community. The challenges of current times and the resulting staffing crisis for the first responder community will be eased by appreciation for all their efforts and ensuring that this legacy continues. I welcome any questions about the operation of the program and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Any questions for Mr. Brewer? Seeing none, thank you. Next, we have Ms. Graham is here. Welcome.
Thank you, Representative Warren, Senator DeChambeau, and distinguished members of the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. It is a delight to be virtually in a room with you again. I look forward to being in the room with you in person, hopefully in the near future. I cannot add anything to the commentary that is any more eloquent than what you have already heard. MMA hasn't established our official position. Our LPC meeting, our Legislative Policy Committee meeting, will be this week, in which we will review this, though we have historically strongly supported this. EMS and fire are traditionally departments that have mutual aid without any restrictions between those communities. So when rural communities are struggling, it is often the other communities that are responding, and they are doing so with increasing burdens. It basically takes in a single ambulance off the road for an hour now under COVID just for cleaning. So those agencies that are responding to help are often finding themselves putting equipment out of service to help these agencies respond where they don't have volunteers. So we welcome any sort of assistance that can help other communities shoulder the burden where there really is a lack of capacity for those property taxpayers to be able to greater fund these services that are so vital. And generally, I'm assuming that the LPC is definitely going to be supporting this, but should there be any additional information or questions that you may have, I will return with that solid position after they have the meeting to review this again this week. And I'll be available if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. Any questions for Ms. Graham? Seeing none, thank you. Chief Brooks, welcome back.
Yes, it didn't seem like it was that long ago that I spoke with all you folks. Again, thank you, Representative Warren and Senator DeChambeau and members of the committee for listening to me again for a second. I apologize. I have to do this off the cuff. I can't read a written speech worth beans, so I tend to just have to run it off the top of my head. As I had said earlier, this is something we've been working on in excess of 22 years. There is a couple of general questions that sometimes come up with this, and that's, you know, why is the state, most fire organizations obviously are local municipalities, but as Chief Gillespie mentioned earlier, most of these organizations are struggling just to keep the doors open, to be able to fund for equipment and that stuff. There's, even though as we have budgeted $500,000 this year to bring the third-party administrator on, and my municipality could and will donate money in for our organization. Most municipalities in the state that are struggling to get people are struggling to come up with funds that are no way going to be able to fund this part of the process. And this is really a statewide problem. It's something we're having. It's not something that's only happened in Aroostook County, Washington County. I have mutual aid towns to me that struggle tremendously to find personnel right here in Kennebec County. So it's a statewide problem, and it needs some address from a state level. So we appreciate your support in the past. What we're looking to do is to continue the process. As Representative Pickett mentioned, a lot of people have been doing, I've been doing this for 32 years, and I probably won't get a lot of credit for that part of it. But if we could get some funding in there immediately, that will start helping those that have been doing this for so long right out of the gate, as well as keeping younger people on board. This is really more of a retention process. There is a very serious problem with recruiting and keeping volunteers in the state, and this is a piece of it. I've come and testified in front of you for training facilities that you supported us. I've come and talked about our training organization for classes per se, so for buildings, for classes, and this is another piece of that puzzle. There is no one law or bill that we're going to pass that's going to solve this problem, but this is something that helps with the retention of keeping firefighters once they're on board. The other side of this too, that a lot of people don't see, and I don't want to take a lot of time, is that for an organization like mine, which actually has a very healthy roster, and we do a very good job with keeping younger people on board and so forth, we're a little bit outside the norm. This program still creates a competition within your department. Not everybody on an individual department will always qualify for this program. It has to do with your point system. You have to show up to calls. You have to show up to training. You have to show up to meetings in order to get those points. So even for an organization like me that has plenty of people, I don't always have plenty of people at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And this helps incentivize these people to show up and help me as well. So it will help every fire organization in the statewide. And I think that's the important piece that we don't want to lose. So we appreciate your support in the past, and I just ask you to continue that.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief Brooks? Seeing none, thank you. Mr. Bunker, thank you for being here again.
Thank you for having me, and thanks to the audit committee for letting me speak on this. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, as they say, because I'm sensing great support from your committee, and I hope that continues. But I want to give you my perspective on this, both as a member of the LoSAP board themselves. I'm the Maine Municipal Association representative on that as a past MMA president. So I can appreciate it from a municipal standpoint. I'm also a selectman in my hometown for over 30 years. So as an employer, I can talk about this. And I'm in my youthful 43rd year as a volunteer firefighter in my town, so I can speak from that standpoint also. As a selectman, I worry every day if I can pass a straight face test to tell citizens in my community that we're doing due diligence to make sure fire and emergency medical services are there adequate when they are needed in a citizen's greatest time of need. And quite frankly, as an employer, my municipality is struggling every day to recruit young people far younger than me and retain the ones that we've got to make sure those services are running every day. As a firefighter myself, I've seen my department shrink from a high of 35 firefighters with 20 people on the waiting list just to get in. Now we're lucky if we have 20 and there's no waiting list and there's nobody applying to get there. And it's absolutely a struggle. A couple of weeks ago, we had a structure fire in the town of Livermore Falls that we responded to way out of our general territory. There were 14 fire departments who were toned out to help to get an adequate crew to be able to do structural firefighters. 14 departments, when typically your hometown and maybe one neighbor would be sufficient. And of all of those people, less than half of the folks who arrived were trained and certified in self-contained breathing apparatus to be able to do interior firefighting. I was hearing departments who are responding over the radio saying we're sending an engine, but it's only me as the driver. It's absolutely critical nowadays that we do something to stem the loss of firefighters and finding a way to recruit other firefighters that are there. Medical calls. My surrounding towns depend upon many of them firefighters who are also EMTs to respond as first responders to get there while we're waiting for our paramedic level ambulance services to make it to the scene. They're the ones that are holding the fort for life-threatening issues, and they're a dwindling resource also, and we need to make sure that we're including them. Then finally, as a LoSAP board member, as the chief mentioned, we've been working for years on this. We've finally got our first step, our initial appropriations to get a third-party administrator going, but that cannot be seen as the only step. That was the first step. We need continued support to make sure this program is a viable option for those that are there that earn their just rewards for those. Only the first step itself. My concern is if the legislature and my beloved governor fail to provide continued support on this, it's going to send a chilling message to fire and EMS personnel around the state and be seen as a tragic failure to acknowledge the years that they put in on that. I was struck by Representative Newman, who had a concern about folks that had been in the program for 20, 30, 40 years and whatnot, what they receive at the end of that. I was chuckling with one of my fellow firefighters just a day or two ago, asking if I made it to 50 years, was I going to get a gold watch? And my reply was, nowadays I might get a plastic Fitbit, but that would be all that I would receive from the end of all of those decades. We must do more. This is a crisis point now, and I want to make sure that all the years that we're committing is not all for naught on this. So I strongly urge your support. I thank you kindly for this. I hope that we can all gather together to be part of the solution in keeping this program viable. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Bunker, and thank you for your 4+ decades of service. Any questions for Mr. Bunker? Seeing none, thank you. Is anyone here to testify in opposition to LD 1803? If you are, please raise your electronic hand. Seeing none, anyone here to testify neither for nor against LD 1803? Seeing none. Any information from the committee needed from Jane? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Senator DeChambeau, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you. I just want to be sure what I'm seeing here. Both these bills will come up for a work session. They're scheduled on the 28th. So that's a week from this Friday, am I correct? I believe so.
Yes.
So both of them will come then? Okay,
We
thank
could,
you.
of course, suspend the rules and go directly into work session if you were interested in making that motion. Looks like Representative Pickett has a question. Representative Pickett?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would make a motion that we suspend the rules and go into work session for the purpose of voting on this bill.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Representative Pickett. I have a second by Representative Newman. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Representative Pickett, you don't have your hand up, right?
I did, but I was going to make the actual motion, but we got to vote on the first one first, so I'll lower it for the minute.
Okay, thank you. Deb, do you want to call the roll to suspend the rules and go into work session?
Certainly. Representative Warren.
Yes.
Representative Warren votes yes. Representative Morales is
she had another public hearing to
Okay.
testify at, so she'll be back, I think, soon.
Okay. Representative Reckitt is absent. Representative Sharp is absent. Representative Lookner.
Yes.
Representative Lookner votes yes. Representative Pickett.
Yes.
Representative Pickett votes yes. Representative Costain.
Yes.
Representative Costain votes yes. Representative Rudnicki is absent. Representative Newman.
Yes.
Representative Newman votes yes. Representative Pluker.
Yes.
Representative Pluker votes yes. Senator Lawrence is absent. Senator Searway.
Yes.
Senator Searway votes yes. Senator DeChambeau.
Yes.
Senator DeChambeau votes yes. That's 8 yes votes, unanimous of those present.
Thank you, Deb. Representative Pickett.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I move LD 1803 ought to pass.
Second it.
We have a motion by Representative Pickett and a second by Representative Newman. Ought to pass on LD 1803. Do I have that right? Yes. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Deb, could you call the roll?
We're voting ought to pass on 1803. Representative Warren.
Yes.
Representative Morales is absent. Representative Reckitt is absent. Representative Sharp is absent. Representative Lookner.
Yes.
Representative Lookner votes yes. Representative Pickett.
Yes.
Representative Pickett votes yes. Representative Costain.
Yes.
Representative Costain votes yes. Representative Rudnicki is absent. Representative Newman.
Yes.
Representative Newman votes yes. Representative Pluker.
Yes.
Representative Pluker votes yes. Senator Lawrence is absent. Senator Searway.
Yes.
Senator Searway votes yes. Senator DeChambeau.
Yes.
Senator DeChambeau votes yes. That is 8 affirmative votes of, so unanimous of those present, and 5 members are absent.
Thank you very much, Deb. Thank you, committee, and thank you for the folks who brought this to us again this year. We appreciate it. Okay, so that finishes our public hearings for the morning. We do have one work session. How do people feel about going right into that and finishing up our work for the day? I'm seeing some. I'm
Is
seeing
the
some
sponsor
yeses.
here?
I just texted the sponsor, Senator, and let her know that she's up. So let's see how quickly she can join us. Let's take 5, just to give her a second to get here. I know she's got other things going this morning, so let's just take 5 and see if we can get her here.
Okay.
Deb, could you send the link to Representative Gramlich? Thank you. Okay, she's going to send it right over to you. Was anybody keeping track of how many minutes it's been? Because I didn't. A couple, okay.
Representative Gremlich is coming in.
Hi, Representative Gramlich. Representative,
morning.
Warren just went to see if she could get printouts of, do you have an amendment?
Yes, and
Okay.
I'd asked your analyst to forward it to the committee members.
Is it me or your volume isn't up? I couldn't hear you.
No, you know, I've been having a hard time hearing people all day long on Zoom, so I'm not really quite sure. I'll just try to speak
Maybe
more.
you can, I can't hear Lori.
She's coming in loud and clear.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, Representative Pickett. I will try to speak more loudly, Senator.
Sorry, Representative Gramlich. It's my fault. It'd be nice if I plugged in. There we go. Sorry about that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm getting to think it's my age now.
Never.
Okay, don't laugh, Senator Sherway.
I know.
All right. Good morning, Representative Gramlich. Thank you for joining us. I just went downstairs and printed off some copies of the amendment for those of us who are here. So we are now on work session for LD 1447, and let's start with Jane, and then we'll turn it over to Representative Gramlich.
Okay, thank you. This is a bill, an act to require training in racial issues, racial justice, and social issues at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy, and to establish additional requirements for law enforcement officers and candidates. This bill, which was sponsored by Representative Gramlich, was heard on May 7th and worked on May 11th last year. The bill was carried over at the request of the sponsors so that additional work could be done on the proposed amendment. During the time period between then and now, you have gotten a number of pieces of testimony. The most recent two from Emily Wright and Rebecca Scarborough came in this morning, and Chief Jared Mills from the Augusta Police Department submitted testimony in support of part of the bill this morning. And in case you hadn't had a chance to see that, he said his concerns are with the provisions of the bill dealing with employment criteria, and that he has no objection to the additional training requirements stipulated in the bill. So I read that as his concern is with section 1 of the bill, and then section 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all about training. I'll stop there rather than go through everything, because I know Representative Gramlich has an amendment and that I've shared with you this morning, and Deb is ready to put that up on screen share it whenever you want. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I think having that, well, let's start with Representative Gramlich, and then when you're ready, we'll have Deb screen share it for you.
Yes, thank you, Jane. That was great. And thank you, Representative Warren, Senator DeChambeau, members of the committee. I sincerely appreciate your indulgence in both your reception to carrying this bill over last session and your due diligence on giving it the attention that it needs. Throughout the course of the summer and fall, I had connected with a handful of folks, and admittedly not all vested parties, but a handful of folks relative to this proposed legislation, and had reached the conclusion that I think that it would be beneficial to not only the work that we're doing in the legislature and certainly to this committee, but also to the most affected parties, most affected vested parties, those being in our criminal justice system and law enforcement. And so given that, I have amended the bill to a resolve, which would be a study including stakeholders and vested parties appointed by both the Senate President and the Speaker of the House to examine the components of the bill that include the training, as well as how that might be implemented in terms of the criteria that one would need before entering police academy. I had some fairly productive conversations with folks at the University of Maine in Augusta, namely Noel March, who has been working pretty diligently on crafting and putting together curricula and a syllabi for criminal justice training, an associate's degree in criminal justice training. But I don't want to get too far ahead here, because the intent of the bill really has changed in terms of looking at all the options on the table and having the study group report back to this committee with ideas about what would be the best way to move forward, so that the committee could then craft legislation of their choosing, depending on what the results of the study are.
Thank you for that, Representative. Would you mind just doing a quick walk through while Deb shares the amendment? I do know that for some members, this is the first time they're seeing it. I know it was emailed out, but you know how it goes. We're all just doing a million things. So if you could just sort of high level walk us through what you've proposed here, I think that'll help us all to get on the same page of what we're looking at.
Yeah, yes, Representative Warren, thank you. And I will also respectfully ask that in the event that I miss a high level or any specificity of detail that we ask your analyst who was instrumental in assisting with the crafting of this amendment to feel free to jump right in. So as I outlined, this bill really does change in terms of what the outcome would be. Initially, there would be legislation that would be a product of the initial bill. The amended version is a study, a result to study training on racial issues, racial justice, social issues at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy, and additional requirements for law enforcement officers and candidates. And so, as I identified in my preamble when I first started speaking with you folks, we would want to make sure that we had members of the public adequately identified in terms of who would be at the table. Who are we talking about here? And so I'm going to pull my copy of the bill up too, because it just, Deb, it shows up a little bit bigger on my screen than it does on the screen share. So what we would want to have is some appointments made, like I said, by the Senate of the president of the as the Speaker of the House. We would want to include the Commissioner of Public Safety or his designee, the Director of the Maine Criminal Justice Academy or that director's designee, and 4 members appointed as follows. We would want to have a representative of a statewide association of law enforcement, which would be appointed by the Senate President, representative of a statewide organization that advocates for civil liberties, which would also be appointed by the President of the Senate, representative of public institution of higher education that would provide courses at the associate's and master's level, appointed by the Speaker of the House. And I referenced that I think we have an outstanding resource right here in our own backyard in Augusta at University of Maine in Augusta, where they're currently working on some of these issues relative to the amended version of this bill. And additional members appointed would be from a statewide association that advocates for restorative justice. And then, as always with legislative committees, whoever the appointments are, the one from the House and one from the Senate would be automatic chairs of the committee. The committee would do their work and they would do a report back to you all to review the tenets that I had noted in the initial bill. So what are the best practices for training in law enforcement? Where are we in terms of issues relative to racial justice and racial issues? I know that presently the Academy has a requirement for 720 hours. I've done a bit of research in terms of what other states are providing, and it's really variable. It's really all over the board in terms of what is being required throughout the country. I'm not saying any one way is right or any one way is not right. There's just a lot of disparity about what's being offered throughout the country in terms of training. And then once a candidate graduates from the Academy, what kind of ongoing training is there? And I know that there is ongoing training. I would like to have that examined a little bit more closely to assure that law enforcement officers have the tools in their toolbox to be successful. I know that for me as a social worker, we are confronted with very complicated issues all day long, and we have the training and the skill set to address a lot of those issues, and sometimes we're really at a loss. I think it's really unfortunate that in this day and age, quite often our law enforcement officers are walking into environments that are really complicated, really tricky, and very challenging and very difficult. It's very different from the days that have gone by, at least when my grandfather was in law enforcement and my uncle was in law enforcement. We all know that the world has become a much more complicated place for all of us to navigate. And so again, I recognize I might be being a little bit redundant here, but my goal and objective is to give law enforcement the tools they need to be successful. That's my objective. So the study would review all of these issues relative to training, dealing with people with substance use disorder, working with folks who are experiencing homelessness, making sure that behavioral health disorders are adequately being addressed, and how do we de-escalate those types of situations, which can be really tricky and complicated. I also want to propose that the amended version of this bill, if you so see fit to pass it, would also include a review of the requirements for the certification and recertification relative to the applicant and what they bring to the table. I know currently, if an applicant is under 21, they must have 60 hours in a related field. We know that 60 hours is an associate's degree. Again, leave that up to the committee as it gets appointed, should this bill be passed as amended, so that all of this can be thoroughly examined, so that we can have best practices for our candidates in the academy and then post-training. Let me just see.
Great, thank you.
I think I've covered the gist of it. I don't know, Jane, if you want to jump in at all, but I think I'll stop now. I think I covered the high level, Representative Warren.
Great, thank you, Representative Gramlich. Any questions for the representative? I'm going to start with Senator DeChambeau.
Thank you. Representative Gramlich, I happen to have page 1 printed, but not page 2. So
I just brought you both
just
pages.
found it. Okay, there it is. And the date that this is going to come back is this December of 22.
Yes. And
okay.
And certainly if that doesn't give an adequate amount of time in terms of when the appointments would be made and when the committee begins to do its work, certainly you all can, have that conversation in terms of whether or not that's a realistic time frame.
As far as best practices, do you have an idea? Are you going to focus on best practices within the state of Maine, or how are you going to reach out for best practices?
Well, there again, Senator, thank you for the question. There again, I would really leave that to, should you opt to pass this bill and it becomes law, and a committee is formed to study this, I would leave that to the committee to examine not only what are we doing in Maine in terms of best practices, but there's some innovative models in other states that are doing things a little bit differently, and perhaps to reach out to some of our colleagues and counterparts in other states so that we can, again, assure that we are giving our law enforcement workers who are doing really incredible work and very difficult work, the tools that they need to be successful.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Searway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't know if there was any data showing that there was an issue here in Maine. I talked to the colonel of the state police, and he had said that they did research and they found that there wasn't any racial problem that we had here in Maine from what they looked and researched. And I understand, and I have the highest respect for Noel March, and I think it's great that you reached out to him. And I think that a resolve is better than making this law, because I think a lot of this is already covered in the academy. In fact, I take the courses, and a lot of these things you just touched on, we had to deal with this year on courses. It does get covered. So I'm just wondering how this will all filter out in the study, and because I just don't want to see us comparing, Maine to other problem areas where it's not working. I mean, we've, you know, if you look at California, for example, it's got a very serious issue, and they've got these laws, and a lot of times you promote problems then help them. So I'm just concerned about that. I just don't want to bring laws from another state that doesn't relate to Maine. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Thank you, Senator Searway. It's always nice to see you. And I appreciate the question. Let me be really clear. And if I wasn't, I apologize to the committee. I'm not suggesting that the state of Maine adopt laws from other states at all or in a cavalier way. What I'm suggesting is that perhaps embedded in this resolve is an opportunity for the committee, if such a committee is appointed, to have the opportunity to examine what might be successful in other states that have similar demographics to the state of Maine. The study committee may decide that that's not anything at all that they want to implement or look at within the state of Maine. But I wanted to give the latitude to the committee, if such a committee were appointed, to have that opportunity to review it.
Now, just to follow up, I just wanted to know, it was no March available today on today's work session?
I don't believe he is here. I know that I know, because I also teach at the University of Southern Maine, the semester is just starting, so we're all kind of busy with the beginning of the academic year. But I'm sure, I mean, I do have an email from him that kind of outlines some of the work that they have been embarking upon at UMA. Happy to forward that along if you'd like it.
Sure, thank you.
Representative Kluger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move on to pass as amended. I think this seems like a very measured approach to looking at the issue, where we can really get law enforcement at the table, get other ACLU or other folks at the table where they can talk about it and see what issues there are and what approaches we can take to improving the situation if it needs improvement.
Thank you, Representative Kluger. We have a ought to pass as amended motion on the floor. I will second that motion. Representative Pickett.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I see that we have Assistant Director Peck on the participant list, and also Rebecca Graham. I'd like to hear from both of them. I read some of the information that Rebecca had to say regarding this, and I thought it was very useful, and what their thoughts are on the bill changing to a resolve and how that all might work. This is a very important issue, and it's one I think we really have to have a lot of information before we even consider doing a resolve on it, before we can move forward with it.
Thank you for that request, Representative Pickett. Hang on one second.
Yes, I'd like to hear their position on the amendment.
Thank you. I was asking my co-chair if she agreed to have those folks join us. So let's start with having Mr. Peck join us. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Good to see you all, and thank you.
So we'd love to hear what your thoughts are on 1447.
Sure. So, well, first of all, let me just say thank you, Senator DeChambeau, Representative Warren, and all the honorable members of the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. This is a very important topic, obviously, and I think it's a good idea for all of us to be looked at and to be transparent. Obviously, this is the first look, or the first time we've heard about the amendment. The only thing that I'm thinking of as we're going through it is that we have an excellent Board of Trustees right now that sits here at the Academy. There's 18 members on that board that are appointed by the governor. And, you know, just some of the makeup of that board right now are members of Department of Corrections. There's a representative from the Maine Chiefs of Police Association. There are representatives from educational, from academia. We have representatives from the Wabanaki tribal governments, the Attorney General's office. We have citizens on the board, and we meet every other month. And now those meetings are open to anyone and everyone. And again, we're always looking for input. We always want to be transparent. Anybody can recommend any training topic. They can look at our lesson plans. All of those are available to the public. We want to do the right thing, and I think we are doing the right thing. So that's just going through the back of my mind as I was looking at the amendment by Representative Gramlich. So I guess that's, you know, we here at the Maine Criminal Justice Academy and the Board of Trustees are fully supportive of the training topics mentioned in the proposed bill, as we testified to both the Director Desjardins and myself last May. A lot of those topics we already have. Just looking at some of the mandatory topics over the last couple of years for all law enforcement across the state of Maine: responding to mental health crisis, law enforcement and critical thinking, law enforcement approach to substance use disorder, de-escalation, implicit bias, plus all the electives that individual law enforcement agencies can elect to train in. So those are just some of the mandatory topics. And I know there was a questions asked back in May about our basic school. And, you know, just looking over some of those lessons plans this morning, you know, we touch on all of those that I just mentioned, as well as cultural diversity, dealing with the vulnerable, mental health first aid, Americans with disabilities, crisis conflict management, civil rights, interpersonal communications, critical stress debriefings. We bring in all of the best subject matter experts that we have in the state of Maine to come here and teach. All of them volunteer to come here and teach, both at our basic school and in service classes. So I think that's kind of thinking out loud again. We do have an excellent Board of Trustees, and I think that's where we like to go and have anybody look at, you know, our training here at the Academy, I guess.
Thank you. Associate Director or Assistant Director? I can never remember the proper term.
Jack is fine.
Jack, that's how I feel too. Charlotte's better. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, so I have some folks with their hands raised. So for folks who have your hands raised, do you have questions for Mr. Peck? Okay, great. Let's start with Representative Pickett, and then we'll go to Senator Searway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Peck, Jack.
Yes, sir.
I guess what I just heard what you had to say, and I guess my question to you is that am I right in assuming that you at the Academy, the people at the Academy, when this bill first came into effect last year, you took it, you looked at it, I know you testified on it. There was testimony sent in from the Academy, I believe by yourself and also by Director Desjardins as well. And you took it and looked at it and realized the importance of it. And then at that particular time, without waiting for the committee to come up with a guideline of where you ought to go, you started taking and looking into ways that you could start possibly implementing and working toward making some of these happen as part of the curriculum without having to be told to do so by us as a committee. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, first of all, let me say just good morning to you, Representative Pickett. And I guess correct to part of that statement. I think that we were already training in most of these topics already. We didn't start. Like I said, some of these are going back several years, and especially at the basic school. So I don't think that this was a knee-jerk, it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction on our part. This is already training that we've had. We have the board look this over if there's any new training topics and any mandatory training topics. There's a training committee that members sit on that is referred to the board, and the board votes on that to have those mandatory topics covered for every law enforcement officer in the state of Maine, as well as our correctional officers as well.
And you're familiar with JPMA training?
I am. We have several training platforms that we offer here at the Academy. JPMA is one of those.
Yeah, and would you agree that for quite some time now in the JPNPA training that a lot of the smaller agencies, at least back when I was still chief, a lot of the small agencies really relied on heavy for in-service type trainings, as well as the mandatory things that we had coming from us from the academy and stuff, that a lot of a good portion of some of this kind of training has been going on for years, not just recently, but for years for officers moving forward. That was back when I was still in law enforcement, and I've been out for 7 years. So would you agree, we as law enforcement, we not only take this serious, we try to bring ourselves to the very best level we can be to these things. And the academy, the board of the academy, board of trustees, which I'm familiar with as well, is always looking to try to better the standard of training there at our academy. Because as far as I'm concerned, I think we're one of the best, if not the best trained academy in the country. We do yeoman's work there, and I congratulate you guys on that. So I just wanted to get your understanding. I mean, to make sure you understand where I'm coming from, and to just find out where the academy is looking now that you've just seen the resolve for the very first time and stuff. And I thank you for being willing to explain that to us. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. I guess I'm a little biased myself. I think it's one of the premier training academies in the United States as well. That's not only me coming here a year ago, wanting to work here after a 37-year career in law enforcement, but just hearing from my colleagues in other states. I'm a graduate of the FBI National Academy, and I do think that we have one of the best training police and corrections training facilities in the United States, to be quite honest with you.
Senator Searway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director, I just wanted to ask you, when it comes to a study, and you're going to have, according to this resolve, it would be some of the members at the academy included, but not all, it sounds like. And all the time I hear about they want to know the data, and what more, better than this group that you have at the academy to do this, because don't you deal with all the issues that come up on law enforcement if there's any racial or any crimes that police officers involved with? Don't they go through a review board there?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Any disqualifying conduct comes through the academy, has to be reported by law, by statute, within 60 days. That is then funneled through our CRC, our Complaint Review Committee. And then it would be turned over to the Board of Trustees after an investigation. And then depending on the board's recommendation, it could be anything from a letter of letter of censure to a full-blown certification revocation. So we do deal with that every day, and we obviously are the preeminent, I guess, training. Well, we are the only training academy in the state of Maine, but I think we also offer all the best in-service training and the basic law enforcement training program. Representative Pickett brought up earlier about the JPMA, which is Justice Planning Management Associates. We also have 2 other platforms that we put all of our mandatory training on, as well as some electives. So that way smaller agencies can log in and get some of that training. We realize that, before COVID, we used to do what we call a traveling roadshow. We would go all over the state, provide training with the collaboration of the Attorney General's office, and provide those mandatory training topics as well. So we were covering the entire state from, Kittery to Fort Kent. But since over the last 2 years, a lot of agencies have really been taking up those other platforms that I mentioned, those other media platforms.
So just follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes, you may.
Just so every time they do a review on an officer, doesn't this trigger off any type of training that is maybe lacking if they find something wrong out of those situations?
Yes, there is a review of whatever the complaint is, and there are recommendations made, and we look at the entire picture, the overall picture. We also have, like I said, that training committee. That's not we have a training committee on the board, but we also have one outside that makes a recommendation to our training committee. So we're always looking at that. We're always trying to update it. And obviously, with all of the social issues going on, across our country, we're obviously not oblivious to that. So we want to do the right thing for not only police officers, but for our communities.
So
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to go on and we can come back to you. You've had 2 questions. You've got a whole line of people behind you. So
thank you.
We're going to keep moving here. Senator DeChambeau.
Thank you. So I know it mentions law enforcement in the original bill, and it somewhat defines it as who are certified or being recertified to be subject to this. I think sometimes, or the public or everybody, we're not talking just municipal officers, state police officers. So that would include game wardens, forest rangers, marine patrol, would it not, Mr. Peck?
It would include, well, the way I interpret it, yes, it would be all law enforcement personnel, which would include all those entities, game wardens, state police, the Forest Service, municipal and county agencies as well.
Okay. Probation officers are considered law enforcement, are they not?
It's an interesting question. We just had this conversation with the director of the Adult Community Corrections, Mrs. Gagnon, just last week. We had a Zoom meeting. So that's still, I guess that's a matter of interpretation right now.
Yeah. So that I just want to clarify it. That seems to be correctional officers are certified, but as correctional officers, not all correctional officers are law enforcement. That's correct, is it not?
That is absolutely correct, Senator.
And the ones that are investigators probably, because they have a firearm and they do investigations of criminal behavior, right?
Again, that's absolutely correct.
So I just wanted to bring that up because that's really not clear anywhere that I could see. And also, thank you. I know I keep listening to that list of subject matters. Has that been written down? Could you provide us with the list of what are the subjects that you just mentioned a while back? You have that
Sure.
available?
So the specific is we have, again, like our basic school is 18 weeks long. So we have
But
today
could
we might have 5 or
if-
6 instructors.
Yeah, is that written somewhere, the titles of what the subjects are? That
Yes, actually, I think you can get all of that on our website. You can
Okay.
go on our website and look at every single topic that is taught at the
I shall
academy.
do that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Representative Morales.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And hello, Jack.
Good morning, Representative.
Some questions around just because I understand that these are topics that have been trained upon and are consistently being trained upon in your trainings for certification. So I think I want to specifically talk about what do we train for certification versus what do we have continuing education on. We're just talking about the pre-certification training. And are there any requirements or protocols, regulations that come not from the legislature, but from the academy and the board that you have to train on that touch specifically the issues presented in this amended bill?
So yeah, so the Board of Trustees again vote on what those mandatory topics are every year, both for law enforcement and corrections. It goes through that training committee that is brought forth to the board, and the board can either accept it, deny it, make a recommendation that maybe we should go in, a different direction. And those training topics change every year. And again, they can be, and those again are available on our website. We always we are transparent as best we can be. But again, some of those topics, like I said, were, substance abuse disorder, de-escalation, implicit bias, law enforcement stress and critical thinking, eyewitness identification, responding to mental health crisis, policing the teen brain. And that's only just going back the last couple of years. And then again, we have those more in-depth in-service trainings, and or the basic school is really, it's basic, but it's 18 weeks. So we get a lot more of those topics in as well.
Okay, I understand. And the basic, that's the 720 hours, the 90-day training that we're talking about, right?
The basic school for the law enforcement is 18 weeks, 720 hours, and the basic training for corrections is 5 weeks.
5 weeks, right? And Madam Chair, if I could have one more question.
You may.
Following up on sort of the questioning around, when something's happening in the community, when there are complaints, you adapt and you train on that. I'm wondering what the changes have been made to training since the Judge Nancy Torreson decision in November of 2021 regarding the motion to suppress. I think it was Officer Darcy. what has been added to your trainings regarding that specific decision, and generally when you have court decisions that specifically implicate sort of practices of law enforcement. How does that come into your trainings?
So I'm personally not aware of that particular suppression hearing, but what we do have, again, every year is new law updates and case law updates that are vetted through the Attorney General's office. And those actually are mandatory every year. There's some mandatory things that we have to do every year, firearms training, those types of things, but one of them is new law and case law update. Then again is that we collaborate with the Attorney General's offices and vetted through them. So we're putting out the correct training, the right training that comes out every year with all the new case law updates, because there's a lot coming out every year. Like I said, I might have heard of that one, but off the top of my head, I'm not familiar with it.
And so the case law update, I've gone to law school, and I know at least for the first 6 months of law school, I didn't understand how to read a case or even understand a case. And the case law update is presented by the Attorney General to those in training for certification. Is it a half day or is it a full day? How does that present itself?
So it may depend year to year, to be quite honest with you. So the way I understand it, when the new laws and the case laws come out, both from the U.S. Supreme Court and our courts, and some of them in the circuits courts, depending on what states, if it's relevant to the state of Maine, that is put into a document that we again put it online for everybody. But also prior to COVID, the Attorney General's office, in conjunction with the Maine Criminal Justice Academy, would again do what we call that road show. We would go on the road and provide that training throughout the state. And that way, if there were actual questions, somebody would be there to answer them in person. And also somebody from the Attorney General's office could be there for interpretation. How does that, fall under Maine law? What would that look like to a Maine police officer? What might be the feel in a Maine courtroom from their perspective, and what might Maine law enforcement officers expect with these court decisions?
Thank you.
Senator
Thank you.
Searway, did you have more questions you wanted to ask of Associate Director Peck?
I'm trying to remember now because I kind of was on a track right then. I was just wondering if I understand, they want to study, and I think most of the study is going to be probably through the academy and courts. Is that something that the academy can do on their own without, or if we did a resolve, if it would be directed with the academy's membership that's already formed to have a study if there was certain things that we had to look for in this? I don't know, but it just seems like we really don't have much data to go on to see that there was the big racial problem that we're discussing here.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. Like I said, I think the best course, in my opinion, would be to go through the Board of Trustees. I think it's an excellent board. Again, it's appointed by the governor. I think it's got a great, mix of people on that board. Very open. I know I've said it a couple times. I think very transparent. It's always open to the public. If there were questions, specific questions, they could come to a board meeting, ask those questions. We obviously would try to answer them immediately, or if it was a data thing that we would get back to you folks, or we would answer those questions at the next board meeting. They meet every other month. Usually they're here, but sometimes we travel. I think we're going to go, I think our next meeting is at the main correctional center in Wyndham. So we try to go, travel around as well when we can. But again, I just think we have a really good board right now that could probably work with you all and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank
Thank
you. So Senator DeChambeau and Representative Newman, do you have questions specifically for Associate Director Peck? Okay, Senator DeChambeau.
Thank you. I left my hand up because I had already asked 2 questions. Here's my third. It's not so much a question, but I want a clarification. Training isn't only held at the academy. I just want some clarification. There are regional training put on by the chiefs, and what triggered my thinking on that was Representative Morales mentioned sometimes there could be a community issue, and it doesn't jump up to the academy because not everybody experiences, it could be a certain crime or behaviors or what have you. So I know that if I'm wrong, correct me, but this is what I know. Because of my town happens to be one of the largest cities in York County, and this is in Biddeford, and the fact that we have a training room there, many times that is open to any police chief and officers to talk maybe of a certain crime that's going through the communities or what have you. Now, I know that my chief keeps track of that. That kind of training, and sometimes it's very involved. Someone could come from Washington to talk about a subject. Does that get transferred to the academy? Do you keep a record, or is that available to you? What kind of training they get from their own chiefs?
Senator, that's a great question, and you really hit it right on the head. Individual departments, individual agencies can elect to put on their own training, especially as it relates to their community. They can put on citizen police academies. They can do whatever they would like. When I was the chief of police in Farmington for 10 years, I would have guest speakers come in, if it might be, a subject matter expert just in my area. Maybe it was somebody from our behavioral health unit. Maybe it was somebody from the emergency, the ED at our Franklin Memorial Hospital, just to, maybe even give a half an hour training. Some of them can be all day trainings. It all depends on, what I elected to teach or have taught. I apologize, what I elected to have taught. And again, it's totally up to the police chief if they want to turn in those elective training hours to us here at the academy. Depending on what the training was, and if the board had approved it, we would accept those training hours. Some of those topics aren't approved by the board, so they wouldn't go towards those elective training hours.
Thank you for that, and take it as a suggestion. Whether they're approved or not, I think it would be wise to have a list of what is being taught, but that's just my concern. But thank you for that answer.
Yeah, and just if I could, Senator DeChambeau, just to clarify. So most agencies, again, using myself as an example, and being the former president of the Maine Chiefs of Police Association, I know that most agencies have a training coordinator, or if they're small, it might end up being the police chief, but they keep track of all those hours and all those training hours themselves if it isn't approved by the police academy. I feel extremely comfortable saying that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Associate Director Peck, for being here and answering questions. And we'll move on now. I know we have Representative Newman who's been waiting. And Representative Pickett, did you have an additional question for Mr. Peck, or can we let him off the hot seat here? You're on Zoom. I mean,
Yeah,
yes, you are on Zoom, but you're also on mute.
I just have something to clarify with him just real
Sure,
quickly.
please.
Thank you. Assistant Director Peck, I wanted to bring something else in here too. As far as when I left, the chiefs were still doing this, and I wanted to find out if they are. Many of the districts, the district chiefs, and they will have meetings, sometimes monthly meetings, coordinated like we used to have, where they bring in guest speakers at times, dealing with the issues in the area, in the district, and those kind of things, and even sometimes even a broader scope of that, talking about all kinds of different things that we could take back as chiefs back to our PDs and stuff, and then share with our people in form of possibly a departmental meeting or something like that, and a training. My department, we used to have departmental trainings. I kept track of that stuff. All that stuff was put in the personnel files. Is that pretty much in your recollection from being a chief and also where you are now? Is that pretty much standard throughout the state still? Do they still have those meetings and those kind of things that the continued process of training and keeping up with what's going on, and so you can deal with issues in your communities?
Again, excellent foresight. Yes, they do still have those trainings available throughout the state. I got to be I will be openly upfront and honest. Over the last 2 years, with the onset of COVID, those on-site trainings have been curtailed to an extent, but those are still available. Those are specific to the regions and the committees throughout the state. I think there's 8 of them, and they're up until 2 years ago were very active. Some more active than others. Some would meet monthly. Some might meet every other month. And again, that was an excellent way to address issues specific to their area.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, Representative Newman, you've been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Basically, I just had an observation from looking of the makeup of the committee. We've got listed 1 representative from statewide law enforcement, and that concerns me a little because we have so many different sworn law enforcement officers throughout different agencies. You know, the city police department is going to deal daily on homeless issues, whereas a sheriff's department is going to do it very rarely, and state police might hardly ever see it. You've also got sworn people in the fire marshal's office, game wardens, and I think that's putting an awful lot of stuff on one person's plate to try to keep in touch with all of these different organizations. I'm not really sure how, you know, since we're changing this over to resolve, how the sheriff's department's really gonna look at this. And I know we do have a sheriff in the waiting room. Is there any way we could hear from Sheriff Sampson?
May I just weigh in on that? Representative Warren?
I'm sorry, I was consulting with my co-chair about if we wanted to invite the sheriff over, and we would both like to do that. But Assistant Director Peck, if you'd like to also.
So again, this is available on our website, and you guys have really have got great answers, and again, hit it on the head, Representative Newman. Just looking at our board members, we have representative from municipal police departments, the Commissioner of Public Safety, the Commissioner of Corrections, the colonel of the warden service, the colonel of the state police. We have the Maine sheriff's representative.
I think, Assistant Director Peck, I think what Representative Newman was asking, and I agree with him, that we should make sure that there isn't just one representative from law enforcement, that we should make sure we have a sheriff, a member of Maine Chiefs of Police, a member of state police. You see what I'm saying? That
Yeah.
what the representative is suggesting is that those duties, as we all know, differ, and we should make sure that we are representing all of those folks. I would also like to see a corrections officer. We're going to have to ask the sponsor if she is available, but we're not asking about your board. We know who's on your board. Thank you for
Okay.
that, though.
Absolutely.
And thank you. And so, welcome, Sheriff Sampson. Good to see you.
Good morning.
It-
I appreciate the opportunity. I'll be brief because I think you've covered it and I think you understand our concerns. Initially, when we were looking at the proposed bill, the only concern we had, I think that we testified to back in May, was the college credit issue about recruitment and hiring new employees, how that would adversely affect us. In seeing the resolve briefly this morning, it was quickly noticed, which is probably just an oversight, especially comparing it to the attitudes this morning in regards to the firefighter bills, where it wasn't inclusive enough of all representation. That's why I think this might be an oversight. I'm glad Representative Newman noticed it, and I'm glad you gave me the chance to speak. I just think if you, with any kind of resolve or any kind of issue you're trying to address, you're always better off being more inclusive of all the stakeholders involved. So I'd appreciate the opportunity for sheriff, municipal, state representatives to be involved at the table, because they're the practitioners that could probably bring out a lot of useful information to the other panelists you'll have involved. Again, more conclusive, probably gives you a better product in the end, and addressing to the issues that you're all trying to identify here, and not overlook anything as part of the process. But thanks for the opportunity to speak, and good luck with whatever direction you choose. And hopefully the suggestions about multiple agencies or representatives that Representative Newman brought up and you guys are talking about are amended as part of this resolve.
Thank you, Sheriff. That's very helpful. We appreciate that. And let me ask the sponsor, what I would like to suggest, because I agree with Representative Newman, is that there's somebody representing the Sheriff's Association, Maine Chiefs of Police, State Police, Tribal Police, and Corrections.
Thank you, Representative Warren, and thank you, Representative Newman, for bringing that up. And Sheriff Sampson, I completely agree. I leave the purview of how you amend it to the committee. I believe very strongly that having all of the vested parties involved at the table is critically important to have a product that can be reported back to you so that you all can make informed decisions about the direction in which you would like to go. So yes, I'm agreeable to, I guess, further amending it. I don't know if it would be a committee amendment or how that would exactly work, but yes, having an inclusive, diverse set of stakeholders at the table is very important.
Great. Thank you, Representative Gramlich. Senator, did you have something to add to that?
Yes, especially the list after the question I asked about corrections, they are not law enforcement officers. They do not get 18 weeks of training. They do not even, some of them, especially at the Maine State Prison, have firearms training. Correctional Center has a handful, and those are usually supervisors that are firearms. So to be, they've never been considered, and that is true of their unions and their pay. They are not law enforcement. Some of them are. So if you say it's all law enforcement, but not corrections.
Thank you, Senator. So I would like to, okay. Yes, thank you, yes. So I would like to, the way I look at this is this is a proposal from Representative Gramlich to bring in an outside group and do a curriculum review. I've spent my entire life in education. I teach at the graduate level, I teach at the undergraduate level, and I can guarantee you that none of the institutions that I'm a faculty member at would see this as anything other than a great opportunity. And I'm disappointed that the Academy Assistant Director doesn't see it as a great opportunity. I know I'm not alone in the fact that I serve on multiple boards. I'm a board member for many different places. I'm a longtime trustee for an organization that we oversee all of the sewer, all of the wastewater, and all of the water in this entire district. We have a lot of decisions to make as a board. We are a multi-million-dollar district with 3 utilities. We don't have time as a board of trustees to step back far enough from ourselves and take a look at, are we the best we can be? And we actually pay people to come as consultants to work with us that are way above us, because we are so in it, and help us be the best that we can be. Because sewer and water and wastewater, it's expensive. And we don't want to be charging our ratepayers more than we have to. So we spend a lot of time just taking time and looking at ourselves and making sure we're doing the best that we can. So that's a lot of organizations I've just talked about that I belong to, where we are invested in making sure we're doing the best that we can. I'm disappointed that there seems to be some hesitation to doing that from the Academy. So that's why I am going to support this, because I don't think that every one of the 1.3 million Mainers thinks that everything is 100% hunky-dory and there's nothing to improve. I'm also disappointed that there was a lack of awareness about the Torrance decision, and I think that tells us the work that we need to do at the Academy. The fact that there's a lack of awareness about that decision. So I've said enough. That's why I'm going to support this. And so just in response to Senator DeChambeau's, I understand that what the senator is saying is that corrections workers aren't described as law enforcement. But the way that I am thinking of this bill is this is looking at the curriculum. And I want everybody that's affected by the curriculum to have a say in the training. That's why I believe that corrections should be added. And Representative Newman additionally has suggested juvenile corrections. I think they need to be included. So all of the folks that are receiving the training should have representation on the curriculum board that's looking at the training, in my mind. Representative Gramlich, would you agree with those additional seats?
Thank you, Representative Warren, wholeheartedly. At the risk of being redundant, I think it's critically important to have all of the vested parties at the table to have an informed conversation about what the end product will be. And you know, I too have spent a fair deal of my professional life in academia and in teaching, and so I'm not a stranger to some of the development around how we assure, at least in my profession, that social workers are given the tools that they need to be successful and the adequate training that they need to pass our state boards. And I know that we're talking about 2 different professions here, but I'm just looking at it through my lens. And I completely support the direction in which you're discussing this, Representative Warren. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gramlich. Okay, in this order, I have Senator DeChambeau, Representative Pickett, excuse me, Senator Searway, Representative Pickett, Senator DeChambeau, and then Representative Costain. Senator Searway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I kind of look at this differently. I'm not disappointed in our assistant director. I think that they're doing one heck of a job there. I think that what he's saying is if you had any questions, and I haven't heard what the questions are for this study, exactly what the study is going to try to correct. And if there hasn't been any questions, they should be asked to the academy to find out from the board what the data is, and then see what the problem is. Because it seems like we're setting a, whatever you want to call it, a curriculum or something without a issue. And it doesn't even, there hasn't been, from what I heard, any data shown that there was an issue. So I think that the first question has to go to the academy for what the data is to show that there is an issue to get a curriculum made. So I think that he hit it in the park, is if you had any questions to bring it to them. I don't believe, and I think that Representative Gramick has really tried hard to do this, but without the question, I don't think that it shows that it's necessary at this point. I think that the stakeholders have to be included, and I don't think MMA has been included. I don't think the Sheriff's Association has been included, and I don't think the Academy's been included. I think there's some inclusion here before we go to this step of making a new curriculum.
Thank you, Senator Searway. Representative Pickett.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I also think that the assistant director was making it very clear that they take these issues very seriously, making it very clear that they've been dealing with some of these issues before they even were brought to their attention. It's been coming through with their curriculum. We got one of the best academies in the United States of America, as far as I'm concerned, and I think throughout the country, it's considered that as well. I think we're in a position where we have an entity that we can use to make sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing. I think they are the ones that train our law enforcement and all the different corrections, law enforcement, and going right through Maine State Troopers, Maine Chiefs of Police Association, their officers, the Sheriff's Department officers, the tribal officers, and go on and on and on. All of them are all trained there. They all get good training. There's all kinds of opportunities for training throughout the state, as I said, for smaller agencies as well as not. I think it's time for us to realize that our law enforcement in Maine is really doing a great job in doing what they're supposed to be doing. And for any of us to sit here and think for one moment that there are not bad apples in every industry out here, we're crazy, because we know there are. But I think that they're few and far between. And I think that we sometimes gather toward that one incident, and we make sure at that particular point that all of the law enforcement officers, or whatever the entity happens to be, have to be retrained and retraught and all to do their jobs, when the reality of it is, no, they don't. The bad apple needs to be dealt with and taken care of, and whatever needs to happen with them. But it doesn't require a completely all new curriculum to be able to go through it. So I think we've got an academy that does a tremendous job. We ought to be very proud of them. And I think I appreciate the bill. I appreciate the sentiment with the bill, but sometimes, you don't fix it if it's not broke. And quite frankly, I don't think it's broke. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Senator DeChambeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess a clarification of how you interpreted what I was saying about correctional officers and law enforcement. When I first read this bill, I focused on the term law enforcement and said, okay. and made sure that the rest of it did not include correctional officers. Not because I didn't want the correctional officers, but you can't use that title. There's a definition to law enforcement, and it just doesn't fit with that. I, for one, also, corrections officers, both in juvenile and adults or in pre-release centers, could always benefit from training or additional training. The other comment I wanted to make was your view being on a board that deals with water and wastewater, you become a specialist. You know that, and you can bring someone in. I'm looking at this group to study. One thing that is very unique is the people themselves who are going to be appointed to this study board should be trained themselves, trained in knowing what is required training for police officers. You can have a very good idea about behavior, behavioral health issues, mental health issues. And it could be taught, I'm not sure. This has to be dealt with, but it's very difficult for me to see that someone in restorative justice could make some comments about what is required training for a specific role as a police officer. But again, to the sponsor, Representative Bramlage, the focus is on law enforcement, the way your bill is presented. And so corrections could be a whole different study. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Morales?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do appreciate this discussion, and it harkens back to, it brings me back to a lot of the testimony that we heard last year on a number of bills from the community, both here and before appropriations, around some of the needs to address some of the inequities in how our systems, many of our systems, impact racial and ethnic communities in Maine, how they impact people with substance use disorder, folks experiencing homelessness. So I know we have all heard that from our communities throughout the state. It's not just one community or another. We all understand there's some very, very good people working in every department, every municipality, every county in the state of Maine, absolutely. But I really see this, and I appreciate the effort that the representative has taken to look at it as sort of a resolve of codifying what the assistant director is saying we are doing. And I really appreciate that we are doing some of these things that are in this proposed resolve. And I see no issue at all with not codifying it in law, since it is what we are doing. And I commend the department for including all of this in the training already. And I also see that, you know, I sit on a number of boards too. And again, you're a volunteer on a board. It's true. You don't have a lot of time to really dig deep into, well, what could we be doing better? What are best practices out there? Who's doing something that maybe we never thought of? So I definitely think that putting some resources towards a study, hiring a consultant to do that. We've done that with a number of bills already this session. Will get us at doing better. And again, it's no slight to anybody doing the work individually. This is more about a system doing the best it can do and meeting the needs of our community members, which we heard in this community over and over again, that we can do better at that. So I have confidence we can get there. And I thank the representative for bringing this bill.
Thank you, Representative. So we have a motion on the floor. Unless there's more discussion, are we ready for a vote? The motion on the floor is ought to pass as amended. Deb, are you ready to, Senator Searway?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, if the stakeholders have even been involved in this new amendment, and I'd like to hear from them after they review before we go into a vote. Representative Greenwich, could you include the director at the Academy, the Sheriff's Association, MMA, the Chiefs Association, before we go into any of this? Because I think, you know,
Senator, excuse me, but you should be directing any request to the chairs of the committee, not to the representative who is here representing her bill. I think we're
Okay.
ready to vote. It's clear you disagree, and that's fine, and you can vote against the bill. But let me check in with my co-chair. But just for future reference, it's the chairs that you should be making these requests of. So
well,
let's
certainly,
take
can
a
we
quick.
caucus? Can we caucus?
You'd like to take a caucus? Okay,
Yes.
let's take a 10-minute. Can we do 5, or do we need, can people make it in 5?
Give us 15 minutes so that people can take a break.
No, I'm not going to 15. Let's take
Okay,
10
10 minutes.
minutes.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Those cows look pretty good.
Yeah,
Imagine, I can't believe what end is showing though.
what's that?
I can't believe what end is predominantly showing in your picture, however.
Right.
Oh,
Oh,
there's
a cat.
them. There's the one that's behind the brains of this outfit. She
I
making all
can't
the
get it.
decisions.
I can't get him to leave. He wants to be the,
Good,
Well-
that, we need another cat in this committee. That makes it fun. So
okay.
Jane, we have a question. Oh, I think Jane's back. I think we need to wait for Jane before we go forward because we have a question about the drafting. Representative, the terms law enforcement, so where it says law enforcement officers, law enforcement training, we'd like to see that broadened so that it's inclusive of the groups that are actually trained. Oh, there's Jane, that are trained at the academy, since it's their curriculum that's being, looked at. So Jane, what would be the terminology that we would use that isn't just law enforcement, but that includes law enforcement, corrections, folks who are answering the call when the 911 calls, etc. All the folks that are trained at the academy, what in a group, how are they defined?
I don't have the academy law in front of me right now, but I can extrapolate from that law all the groups that are subject to training at the academy and write a definition section into this bill that includes all of them.
Okay. So that it's not just saying, like, section 1 says law enforcement training, and I was misunderstanding what Senator DeChambeau was saying. She's not opposed to corrections officers being included, but it's just that the language isn't including them. Do I have that right, Senator?
Yeah. The House Chair and I just had a brief discussion ourselves. I was from day one law enforcement training. In my mind, that was two separate issues. And so when some of you mentioned corrections officer, I wanted to be straight about that. There are other groups being instructed at the academy. This isn't just focused on a law enforcement officer that carries a gun or can issue summons or execute a warrant. At the academy, it's a philosophy. It sounds like that is racial issues. It's not a behavior, it's a thought process. It's a subscribing and understanding if there's this implicit bias. So, there are dispatchers trained. So it's like it's all or nothing. It's just not one group. But when I read this bill, it is one group, which is fine in a way. And I just want to correct you, Representative Warren, just because I did mention that law enforcement is very rigid. It's a defined function. I don't know if I'd have to almost think about it more if it's for the whole group. I was just making a distinction to have everybody understand that it is a different animal. If you were asking Ms. Overton to change the language so it encompasses everybody, that's almost like an offshoot of a bill, and as a result of this discussion, and I don't know if that's the best thing. I don't know what the original intent was of Ms. Gramlich. It would be difficult to vote for a complete change. We went from a bill to an amendment that I just saw today to something to expand it even more. And I'd rather be more conservative in my vote. So I don't know if that explains anything like that. There's a motion.
Representative, did you want to answer I think there was a question in there for you about, do you support broadening the language past just law enforcement?
Thank you, Representative Warren, and thank you, Senator DeChambeau. More pointedly to the senator's question, the initial intent of my bill was to assure that law enforcement officers had all of the tools in their toolbox to be successful. I've said that a bunch of times here today, and I said it previously when I presented the bill last spring. Based on the conversation that I've heard you all discuss during this work session, I was of the conclusion that there was some reception for broadening that somewhat to assure, we heard from Sheriff Sampson, for example, and others that you had requested to come in, that we potentially examine broadening that so it's not exclusive to law enforcement. Now, the direction in which you all want to take this within your committee, I'm happy to engage in that dialogue and that process, but I'm happy to work with you all in terms of how we get to a place where we can support the amended intent of this legislation, which is to examine what are we currently doing for curricula, what are we currently doing for training, and how can we enhance that so that we can have our folks interfacing within the law enforcement community be as successful as possible.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Costain.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. So looking at this, you had mentioned a few groups earlier, but there's several other people that I think need to be added if we're gonna look at this. The Academy, the group that the Academy has on their board is a pretty good group of the stakeholders, but I think the head of communications, if we're going to do that, the warden service, the fire marshal, Marine Patrol. I mean, when you're talking bringing all the stakeholders in, plus the ones that the Academy have for law enforcement on their board, I mean, I think you're going to have a working committee here of 30 people, and then how effective is that group of 30 people going to be? As you know, the smaller the group, the more you get done. So when you have a group of 30, 35 people, how effective are they really going to be, is my concern with this.
I agree with you, Representative. I think that an organizing tactic I heard was never have a meeting too large that you can't just share 2 pizzas, right? If you need to order more than 2 pizzas, you're not going to get anything done. And I like to stick by that rule. I personally, and I'm open to what other people have to say about this, but I personally felt like, I mean, this is a group that's overseeing a curriculum review. And as we talked about in this room, hopefully they won't find that anything needs to be changed. And I know that there are a bunch of folks in this group, and I know Assistant Director Peck feels like everything is perfect. It's going really well. And so this group will report that back and nothing will change. And I don't think we should be afraid of that. So what we were looking at was sort of the larger groups to be represented. I don't know how granular we need to get. It felt to me, but this is one person, one voice, that by having somebody from the group of sheriffs, municipal law enforcement, state police, corrections, juvenile corrections, tribal law enforcement, sort of covered the larger group, but now I'm hearing, I guess I do agree around warden service, because that is a pretty large portion of, but do you really think we'd have to go to 30?
I guess my only point, if you're asking me, my only point is you talked about having all the stakeholders. When you start looking at all the stakeholders, that's a rather large group. And I guess if the academy, if you had some of the people from the academy, and not that I'm 100% for this either, I have to tell you, I think we have the academy in place. I think we have a board of people from the public. We have a board of police officers. We have a board of educators on the academy board. So I think they're reviewing this themselves. I know myself, I just did my training for this year to keep my police certification. And I just did bias training. One of the mandated reporting classes was that training. So I know that we're doing it. I've done it for the last 10 years of police work in my training. So I know that we're doing it. So I guess I don't know what we need for a number to get where you guys or where we want to be with this to have it. But that's the only point I bring up. If you're looking, I mean, we've said this 3 or 4 times, we want all the stakeholders. So when you start looking at the law enforcement agencies, when I say outside of municipality being one agency, the state police, but all of them, there's a rather large number of law enforcement people in the state, agencies in the state, not, as I said, and that's counting municipality as one for the main chiefs, but other ones. So, I mean, you're looking at a rather large group. And then again, I question how much work will be done with that many people.
Yeah, I really felt like the group that we had sort of brainstormed to come up with, and if I'm the one who said every stakeholder, I misspoke, because I don't think that a group that large is productive, and I don't think that's what the sponsor was looking for. So I apologize if that's what you heard from me, but I think we did need to get larger than just one representative of law enforcement. I think that was too small. So I think we've taken it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as opposed to 1, which feels more comfortable, but I don't think we need to go all the way to recreating the board, which is kind of what I hear you saying.
Right.
Yeah, but so that's my thinking, but I'd love to hear what other people have to say. I think you're first, Representative Pickett. Let me get, Representative Pickett first.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think, at least I can speak for myself. I certainly am not saying anything is perfect, because I don't think there's any organization out here that runs perfectly. I think, but it's a working process that with a very diverse group of people and the Board of Trustees that oversees the academy and oversees what's going on with the curriculum and that stuff there, and the training that's involved throughout the state and everything. I just don't see the need to have to do a review of curriculum that is already in place. And when I was still in law enforcement 7 years ago, I was doing training on a number of things we're talking about here today back then. So it's not like law enforcement is behind the ball. They're actually, in many times, they're ahead of the curve because they're trying to be proactive. And we got a very good system in place right now, which is why I will not be supporting this motion for this resolve. And so I'm ready to vote.
Thank you, Representative. I'm ready to vote too. Representative Reckitt. Representative, you're on mute.
I only caught the last 15 minutes of this discussion and a little bit when I chimed in a bit before, because I've been in the Judiciary Committee all day. But I just wanted to add, I was on the committee that revised the curriculum for the Academy for law enforcement. I was part of the group that was revising or creating the curriculum for corrections officers when I retired. So I never got to the end of that piece. But that group was led by a professional from the Academy and several of us from different parts of the world. I was on the Academy board at, I think at the time that this started. I was on it for 15 years, so I can't remember when all this happened. But I remember that when I left the board, we were getting close to done with the corrections manual. So, but it was done with not a 30 people crowd. And it was representatives from the Academy board, but it was also some other people that we had in order to do that effectively. I think it's worth a conversation with the director of the Academy or the training officer or whatever to figure out what's reasonable to do. But I think that what this resolve would do, I think, if I understand it correctly, would be put together a group that would push to have that happen, that would ask for that kind of thing and other things to happen. So I don't know, how this would effectuate, but I don't see this resolve creating a group that's gonna revise all the Academy training materials. Look at them, see if they're adequate. If they're not adequate, recommend that they be enhanced and changed. But I don't see them starting from square one. So, stop me if I'm totally out to lunch on this, which I could be, but I just don't think it's as big a start as you might think. The finish will take a while, but the start won't take forever. And it won't take 1 million people either. So I'll be quiet.
Thank you, Representative. That's helpful to us to know. Senator Searway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know Rebecca Graham was supposed to speak. I think she was one of the ones that did raise her hand and she didn't get a chance to speak. But also that I believe she was going to state that it's already started the process of looking at a review of the curriculum, and there's some things being done. And so that's why I say the stakeholders should be involved before we go and do a resolution that we're reinventing the wheel when we have such a good group that's available to us that I don't know how you're going to, it seems like we should really get the answers of what we really want if there's going to be a study. So there's a lot of unknowns here, and that's why I couldn't support this. And so I'd like to hear from Rebecca Graham on what she was going to say before we go and make any vote. But that's my request.
Thank you, Senator Searway. I think what Ms. Graham is wanting is for us to add a couple of additional issues to the study. And so let's have Ms. Graham come in, and then I've got a question from a committee member as Ms. Graham moves over. Jane, do we have a sense of a fiscal note, or has this not been sent yet?
Most studies do not get a separate fiscal note. They come out of the budget, which is a separate thing managed by the Legislative Council, I think.
Great. So just for representatives to understand that process, within the budget, each biennium, there is a budget for studies. This would be, if we send it up the rails, then they make a decision of what studies are actually funded out of the study committee funds, right? Jane, I'm asking you if that's correct.
Yes.
We have new people
yes,
that aren't used to the study committees.
Yeah, I do need to also caution you that Joint Rule 353 sets a limit of 13 members on a study and requires that more than half be legislators. Now, sometimes some studies are formed that do not comply with the requirements of Joint Rule 353. I just need you to know that if you go outside, you face some questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Everyone I've been on has ignored that rule because we need the actual experts that aren't us as legislators. But it is true, there is that we will have to overcome for the study. But I think we have that answered about the fiscal note. Ms. Graham, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Representative Warren, and thank you, Senator Searway, for asking for us to come in. I think that had we seen this language in advance, we may have been able to inform it better. So we're starting off at a less comfortable or less uncomfortable space, as it has sounded. I believe that Associate Director Peck would fully welcome some of those pieces, but having not seen the language in advance was probably caught off the back foot and not really able to actually respond, which is what we were hoping for out of the stakeholder group that we had hoped would have been created. We do and are aware that there are some structural issues. We know that there are 5 less staff than when the academy moved to its current location almost 21 years ago now, that are carrying out a significant level of curriculum. So one of the things that I think would be beneficial if you move forward with this to add would be to look at that funding mechanism and that resources piece that I believe the Department of Public Safety has already started to look at. There was an RFP that went out earlier in this year, I believe it was in January, in which DPS was looking for a number of stakeholders that would be involved in a curriculum review and a structural review. I don't know where that work is, but I think that may have helped inform some of this language in advance as well. So I just wanted to say it would be really great if we could start where we know there are some significant issues and maybe make that kind of a central question as part of this as well.
So your question specifically, Ms. Graham, thank you, was to study funding mechanism and staff numbers?
I think a comprehensive review of curriculum needs to understand the structure in which it's built. It's like building a slate roof.
I wasn't disagreeing, sorry. I definitely wasn't disagreeing. I just wanted clarity because we're trying to amend the bill. So excuse me if it sounded like disagreement. Were you suggesting staffing and funding mechanism?
Yes, I believe that should be added in any sort of study review of curriculum, understanding how that gets delivered and the mechanisms and support for that are key.
Representative Gramlich, what's your response to the suggestion by Ms. Graham?
Absolutely. I think that it assuring, you can study anything in the world, but if you don't have the personnel and the funding to do any execution or implementation, then you're not going to be successful. So I'm certainly receptive to that. Thank you, Ms. Graham.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Graham, for bringing that forward. Representative Lookner.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm all for increased training and holding law enforcement and others in the criminal justice system to the highest standard, and to make sure they have the education to, do their job effectively. I think I need to say that in this study, we've had a number of bills in my short time in the legislature before this committee that deal with increasing training and education. And I think any study needs to examine, how effective that training is. And if increased training is not effective at getting at some of these bigger systemic problems at which, we're really trying to address, why is that the case? So I think we need to ask ourselves the question, is training the right route to go about here? And in any study, we need to examine the effectiveness of training and exactly which problems we're trying to address, and if those trainings are actually having any impact whatsoever. So I'd be really curious to see that, and I'd like to see that included in any study here. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lookner. Other comments, questions, ideas, motions? Jane.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but before you get to a vote, I'm going to need a repeat of what the motion is.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So it looks like we don't have any additional comments. I believe that the amendment is to add to 5A, instead of just representative of statewide association of law enforcement, we expand that to include the following list: a representative from the Sheriff's Association, chiefs of police, state police, tribal police, corrections.
I can't write that fast. Sheriff's Association, state police, chiefs of police,
tribal law enforcement, corrections, and juvenile corrections. And I think further, our suggestion from Senator DeChambeau was that we can't just call it law enforcement training and qualification study. We need to refer to what is the curriculum referred to?
Okay.
That term law enforcement is no longer inclusive of the folks who are on the study committee, is the point. Additionally, Ms. Graham has asked that to their duties, so I think then we would be looking at section 5, where there's section 5A, B, C, D, that another one of their duties would be to study the funding mechanism and the staffing of the academy. And anybody else, if I missed anything that we together came up with, please add it now.
Are you talking about the funding of the entire academy or just the training portion?
I thought she was suggesting of the entire academy, training and staff, that that's an issue that has not been solved. But should we get clarification?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge issue.
It's been a long time issue that obviously they need some help solving. Can we bring back over Ms. Graham? Ms. Graham, thank you for coming back over. We have a question. Was your suggestion funding of the entire academy or funding of the study?
I think they both go hand in hand. I think the funding of the academy directly feeds into the number of full-time staff that they have to deliver those programs, and the majority of it is delivered by volunteers. So as we keep increasing the asks, we have not invested in that structure, and we know that. And I think that deserves a much deeper dive than at the same time in tandem, because someone will have to deliver that. And I think we're at that point where we actually need to invest and to review why there's 5 less people.
That's
and
a great point. I think it's been a while since we've needed to invest in the academy. I think it's an issue that this is my 8th year on this committee, and we've known for a long time we need to invest in the academy. You get quality out of what you put quality into, right? And you continue to expect a lot. Like you said, we continue to ask a lot. So does that make sense, Representative Galgay-Reckitt, that it?
Yeah, I just don't know whether it's the same thing anymore. I mean, do you start with the study in the academy and the budget and the staffing and the training, or do you start with just train? I mean, I don't see how it can be in the same study. And I don't know whether you start with the training or you start with the academy itself. I don't know. I'm just befuddled. I don't know how we would pull it off. I'm not saying it isn't all needed. I'm just saying I'm trying to be a realist about both what the academy can do and what it ought to do and what the legislature is willing to fund.
Mm-hmm. Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Representative Warren. I appreciate the deliberation you all are taking on this. It's really an important issue. Perhaps, Representative Reckitt, if the language is included in the amended version of this resolve, it will give an opportunity to have that kind of conversation versus not having the language included, depending on what the study group determines they want to do with it. If it's not there, it's not going to be within the purview of the study commission. It's just my observation. I appreciate that it turns into being what might be an encumbered heavy lift. However, it might be worth having the inclusion of it versus not.
Thank you.
Thoughts of committee members before we go forward? Are folks comfortable voting on this and getting a chance to look at it on amendment review? I see nodding, a lot of nodding heads. Senator Searway.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for asking. I still think that this should be reviewed before we go for a vote through the stakeholders before we and get the language proper, because it seems like there's a lot of miscommunication and they really don't know what this is actually doing.
I see, I have a different perception. I think that they've added in a lot that the stakeholders want, and we've put it into the bill. I don't believe that there's confusion. I understand very thoroughly that you disagree with it and that you're going to vote against it, which is all of our prerogatives. But I don't have the perception that people are confused by it. So maybe I'm misunderstanding you.
Well, I think you listened to Rebecca Graham saying that they didn't get this until just recently, this amendment, and that they would have liked to have reviewed this and got the proper language. I think she's in agreement that there is issues, but we really need to get them on board to have the language of what this study is actually going to do before we just make up something and then vote on it. And I'm just concerned this has not been reviewed enough, and we're just putting something out there that we're pulling straws. And I just don't like it. It's just not the way we've done business.
Mhm. So I'll remind the committee that at any point, somebody could make a tabling motion. That is something we do if that's what people want. Ms. Graham, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, how do we go forward? We're either gonna take a vote or we're gonna table the bill. Ms. Graham, did Senator Searway represent your thoughts correctly that, let me stop there. Did Senator Searway represent your thoughts correctly?
Thank you for that question. I believe that we may be able to better inform the bill from starting from a position from where we know there are some deficiencies that need a deeper review if we had had the chance to review that language prior to this. And, you know, we're grateful that the amendment was or has been presented so that it's no longer a mandate or a barrier to recruitment for this entity. We would like to see greater investment in this, but we also want to recognize what is being done so already significantly. And I do know that some of that work has already been undertaken and it might be able to help inform that lift. So there may have been identified areas within that study that would have allowed maybe a more refined bill, and Director Peck may be able to supply a lot more of that information with regard to that. But I appreciate that you added at least looking at the structural piece of this, because I think the curriculum review does need to include who is actually delivering that and how it's getting delivered and whether or not greater investment in that might need to be done. I think we know the answer, but I think it would be good to actually codify that.
So Representative Graham, like, this comes back to you. There seems to be a request to meet with some stakeholders and discuss how to make the bill better. Are you willing to do that?
Well, I'm certainly, thank you, Representative Warren. I'm certainly willing to do that. I guess my intent with putting it forward as a result for a study would have covered that so that those folks could convene and examine this in its totality. That's why I brought it forward as a result for a study. But if people want to continue to discuss it with me, I'm more than happy to do that. But I'm also more than happy to get this out of your committee so that the legislature can vote on it.
I know, I'm thinking now, I maybe wouldn't have charged ahead at 11:38 if I had known it was going to take us 2 hours. Okay, so we've got some decisions to make. Senator DeChambeau.
Move to table.
We have a
Second.
motion to table by Senator DeChambeau, seconded by Senator Searway. All those in favor of a motion to table? Oh, Deb's going to call the roll. Sorry.
Okay, we're voting. The motion is to table LD 1447. Representative Warren.
Yes.
Representative Warren votes yes. Representative Morales.
Yes.
Representative Morales votes yes. Representative Reckitt.
Yes.
Representative Reckitt votes yes. Representative Sharp is absent. Representative Lookner.
Yes.
Representative Lookner votes yes. Representative Pickett left the meeting, apparently. Representative Costain.
Yes.
Representative Costain votes yes. Representative Rudnicki is absent. Representative Newman.
Yes.
Representative Newman votes yes. Representative Pluker.
Yes.
Representative Pluker votes yes. Senator Lawrence is absent. Senator Searway.
Yes.
Senator Searway votes yes. Senator DeChambeau. Senator DeChambeau.
Yes.
Senator DeChambeau votes yes. That's 9 yes votes. The motion passes.
Thank you, Deb. Great. So we have a couple of members that missed earlier votes. And if you want to do that, you won't have to try to call in and do all that. So those are Deb, Representative Morales, and Representative Galgay-Reckett.
Correct.
So the rest of us are free to go until Friday. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative.
Thanks, Deb. Can you remind me the bill and what the votes were?
Absolutely. So the first one is LD 1797 at the public hearing. There was a motion to suspend the rules and go into work session, which passed with 8 votes. How do you want to vote on that?
I voted on that one, I believe, didn't I?
Oh, you did. Yes. This is the only one you didn't miss.
Right.
So Representative Reckett.
Yes.
Thank you. And then we voted to table LD 1797. How do you vote, Representative Morales?
Yes.
How do you vote, Representative Reckett?
Yes.
Thank you. Next one is LD 1803. At the public hearing, again, we voted there was a motion to suspend the rules and go into work session. And that also passed with 8 yes votes. Representative Morales, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Representative Reckett, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And then there was a motion made ought to pass, and that also passed with 8 votes. Representative Morales, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Representative Reckett, how do you vote?
Yes.
And we are done. Thank you very much for staying on to take care of that.
Thank you, Deb. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
I would, but I'm going back into committee. But the
One
other,
moment, please.
I'm going back to work.
On Friday, we have one public hearing and then followed by the Long Creek report. So if everybody would be ready. I myself will be in government oversight for an hour or 2. I'll try to be back for the Long Creek. So the public hearing begins at 10. Thank you.
thank you.